all of your emotions. There's nothing wrong with the emotions that we have. Everything that's in your body and your mind is there for survival. Everything that we have is designed for survival purposes. So it's not a right or wrong as to what we have. The question, I guess, becomes that now that we're in a more civilized time and we still have a lot of this characteristic from back in the Neanderthal day, we have to learn to adapt to what civilization imposes upon us as rules. So a lot of the things that you could have done and gotten away with at an earlier time of life, those genes are still there, and they still work inside you. Mechanisms and the school system and all that kind of stuff is supposed to help us. Church and all that kind of stuff is to help us put different things in place so that we learn how to adapt and get along in society. There's a couple different ways that we can look at the mind. These are kind of some tongue-in-cheek ways to do that. There are just different ways, but more and more over the years we have found out what the brain is about. We still haven't found out where you are yet. When you look at yourself in the mirror and you say, my name is Debbie or Mary or Joe or Bobby Sue or whatever, who is seeing that and who is acknowledging that? Because you can point to this body, which is something that transcends and changes over time, but the who that's doing the thinking is actually a cranial thought process. It's electrochemical. Our brain operates on about 70 millivolts of electricity and about 20 to 30 different neuropeptides and hormones in the brain. So we're an electrochemical creature. And the mystery of things are, we can do brain scans and EKGs and positron and emotive topography and all this other kind of fancy stuff. And we know where certain centers, auditory and visual centers and all that kind of stuff are in the brain now, but we have never found where you are. What is that part of the brain? We think it's up there somewhere. We don't know. But what is that part of the brain that really makes you you? We start out, you're all lottery winners. You're winners of one of the greatest lotteries of life, okay? Because here you are. You could have been a daisy. You could have been a cockroach. You could have been something else. But here you are. So something in the combination of the DNA, your parents contributed after you got through all that slimy process. What makes you a lottery winner is this, though. Let me tell you that. In the average ejaculation of a man, there's about 250 million to 300 million sperm. 250 million to 300 million sperm. That's a lot, considering it only covers like a teaspoon. That's better odds or worse odds than the lottery. So you won because you are here, and a lot of those would-be brothers and sisters didn't make it. Because after that goes out there, it goes into the most dangerous place known to man, which is the female vagina. Anyone see the movie Saving Private Ryan? Saving Private Ryan? A couple of you guys? Okay. That beach scene where they're getting off the amphibious vehicles and the Germans are gunning them down? That's what it's like when you go inside the vagina. Okay? It's not a friendly place. There's not a welcome mat laid out there. The vagina, the chemicals, lubricants inside the vagina are very acidic and they're very destructive of the sperm. So of those 200 million, 250 million to 300 million sperm, only about 50 make it even close to the egg. And then only 1 and possibly 2, unless you're using fertility drugs or something, make it to the egg. Okay, so that makes you a lottery winner. Now, here you are. Sperm and egg come together. Is that you yet? Could be, right? You develop into this embryo, and the embryo into the fetus. Is it you yet? Could be. It's got the pattern for you. It's got all the genetic codes for you. From the fetus, it becomes the infant. The infant becomes the child becomes the youth becomes the adult, on and on and on. That's why I refer to us as evolving constants. It sounds kind of like military intelligence, an oxymoron. But we are evolving constants, and we do it kind of in front of ourselves. You could look at a picture of when you were a year old, and maybe you'd recognize it because that's what your parents told you looked like, or that was your baby picture, so you remember your baby picture, right? And this is a picture when you were 3 or 4 years old, and you go, yeah, that was me, I remember that part. Or that's what they told me, or whatever. That's when I had the pony or the dog or whatever it was. And by the time you get to 10, you're pretty recognizable. By the time you get to 15, 18, you're recognizable, right? But you have made some substantial changes. You don't look like that blastocyst of those sperm and egg. You're quite a bit different. In fact, you're made of trillions and trillions and trillions of cells by now. Okay? So there's a huge process, almost very miraculous process that goes into making you you. What's even more of a mystery for me is that those cells, when they first divide, are making exact copies of themselves. That's the process of mitosis, okay? Those cells are making exact copies of themselves. How, in the world, if those cells are making exact copies of themselves, do you end up with ears and eyes, nose, with arms and legs and hair? And if they're making exact copies of themselves, how do you end up looking like you do? So there's something very bizarre about that process, something I call it very miraculous about that development. But you are, and we could pinpoint this in a continuum of time. You know, this was you, this was you, this was you. It was all you. Actually, it might have been foreordained from the beginning as far as your physiology. You know, from the time those cells came together and 23 chromosomes from the mom and 23 chromosomes from the dad came together to make you you, okay, that set a stage for certain things. But then now the environment inside the womb has an impact. You know, we know that women who are very athletic, very aerobic and so forth, the more aggressive they are in their workouts while they're pregnant, a lot of testosterone is released inside the amniotic fluid, which tends to make if it was a female fetus, it tends to make the fetus a little bit more masculine, have some masculine tendencies. As I've looked into this, I find that in our genetics, we're 99.9% the same. I'm 99.9% the same as you, same as you, same as you, all of us. All of us in this room are 99.9% genetically the same. Those of you that need to get paternity tests, at least go 6 decimals after the decimal point, because we are all very, very much related. In that 0.1% difference of genetic material, it accounts for over 3 million different qualities that we do not share. That's why we don't look the same, act the same, sound the same. Okay? So there's a lot of things that are going on here with the genes and the gene process, and a lot of things that depend upon our environment and our conditioning of what goes on, what we're trained, what we're exposed to. So a lot of these things are impacting you. So all of those things go into making you you. And as you're developing, you can say, yes, that's me, yes, that's me, yes, that's me, yes, that's me. How do some of the things impact us? Well, we know that domestic violence, if it's done in front of children, that's child abuse. Why is it child abuse? Well, picture a couple, boyfriend, girlfriend, mom, dad, whatever it is, and suddenly they're going at it, you know? And you so-and-so, and you this, and you that, and they're just really getting into it. And you got little Timmy, 3 years old, and little Mary, 3 years old, 2 years old, and here they're seeing that. And kids are like sponges when they're little because they're absorbing, and even though they can't process stuff yet, they can't verbalize things, they can observe, and that's going into their emotional memory system, okay, which is going to be with them all their life. And they see that going on, the little boy is going, gee, I guess that's what big boys do when they get older. And the little girl is seeing that, and she's going, oh, shit, that's what I've got to put up with when I get older. Yeah? But you see, they don't verbalize it, but it's conditioning to them. Things that happen at a time when you're not verbal are almost worse because they stay with you. We have every one of your senses, your eyes, ears, nose, touch, everything, taste, everything has a memory, its own memory system. And those senses feed into your emotional mechanism first. I'll get into this a little bit later, but our brain evolved into three steps. We have a tripartite brain, one right above the spinal cord, one in the midbrain, and then out here in the cognitive area, which is where we'd like to be. This is where the thinking takes place. When a baby is born, the baby has about 200 billion brain cells. Okay? When a baby is born, it has about 200 billion brain cells. By the time you get to be an adult, average adults have about 100 billion. Okay, you heard me right. We start off with more, and what gets stimulated and utilized grows and continues on, and what doesn't get stimulated atrophies and dies. And we're very ecological. We just start consuming those brain cells and use them for something else somewhere in the body. So there's 200 billion brain cells when you're a babe, 100 billion brain cells by the time you're an adult. We also know that there's 100 million neurocells inside your viscera, your innards. Okay, you ever have an intuitive sense about something? You couldn't quite say what it was, but you had this gut feeling that this guy wasn't good, or this thing wasn't right, or this situation stinks. It's because those nerve cells don't report to your cognitive area, it reports to your emotional centers. So it tells you when something doesn't feel right. Everything about your body is geared to keep you alive. Okay? Everything that happens inside your body is geared and it's there to keep you alive. Okay? That's why we have so many cells related to our genitals and our feet. Genitals and feet, what do they got to do? Right? Well, because we walk erect, it takes a lot to maintain balance. So there's a lot of cells in the brain that are devoted to that. And because we have to procreate, and we have to be motivated to procreate, procreation has to be a pretty pleasant experience for us to go do that. Okay? So there's a lot of cells in your body that are devoted to that so that there's arousal. And don't let anyone fool you. The biggest sex organ in the human body is the brain. Okay? The biggest sex organ in the human body is the brain. I know you get those commercials for, what is it, ED, erectile dysfunction. Who's that politician that used to be the guy? Always had the pencil in his hand because he got hurt in the war. I don't know. Can't remember who he is. But I used to see these things. You know, these pharmaceutical companies pay big-time dollars to get to us during primetime television, right? And so I'd pay attention to some of this stuff, and it's, you know, during the 6 o'clock news, suddenly you get this thing about Viagra. Huh? Bob Dole. Bob Dole, yes, thank you very much. I'm Bob Dole. You know, Viagra, are you having difficulties with this or that? Try Viagra. Viagra's going to da-da-da-da, help you for this and this and this, you know? And then it has that disclaimer at the end. If you have an erection that lasts more than 4 hours, call your doctor. Screw that. If I have an erection that lasts more than 4 hours, I'm calling Desperate Housewives. Come on down! Come on down! You know, you want to make use of a good thing. Here's another way to look at the human brain. Does everyone understand that the female brain, this is kind of a tongue-in-cheek version, so don't take this for fact, but the female brain has more connections between right and left hemisphere. So they can be rational and logical at the same time that they're irrational and relation-oriented, which really messes with men because we're very sequential on things. All right, you want me to do this, you want me to do that, and then you want me to do that. You know, it takes us a few milliseconds to catch up, girls. And there's some other things that, you know, women do. I remember my wife would come in and she'd go, "What do you think?" You know, women love to mess with men about that. You know, "What do you think?" You know, and I go, you know, see the Terminator, Arnold Schwarzenegger thing? And I thought, did you get a pedicure? Are they new shoes? You got a new purse? Is it manicured? You know, the hair color relatively the same? You know, oh, it looks nice, honey. Oh, you didn't notice. Why don't they just come out and say, "Hey, how'd you like my hair? You like this color?" But no, they want to make sure that we are a fool before we get across to say anything. Okay, so I have the honeydew list in the female brain corresponds to the excuse area in the male brain. I have the male sense of direction upside down for a reason. Any of you guys believe that as long as you have a full tank of gas, you're never lost? Yep. Yeah, there we go, amen. Okay, it used to drive my wife nuts. There's a reason for that. There's a reason for all of this stuff in our brains, okay? Going back to the day of the Neanderthals, okay? If you were to go to an area where there's another tribe and you were to say, you know, "Hey, I'm a new guy in town. I don't know where the watering hole is or where the buffalo roam. Could you help me out?" You're liable to get clubbed over the head and have them drag you into their cave and have their way with you, okay, which wasn't too pleasant. Plus, they smelled really bad back in those days, okay? So men don't like to put themselves in a vulnerability situation with another man or with somebody else. So that's why we send our wives to Radio Shack to get a part that even we don't know what it is. That way, when they come back with the wrong thing, we can yell at them, okay? But there's reasons for those type of things. It's like in the schoolyard. The girls go out in the schoolyard and they find all their best friends and stuff like that, and they tell their deepest, darkest secrets to the best friend. The best friend tells the deepest, darkest secret to the other people, and next thing you know, it's all this trust issues going on. Whereas men go out to the playground, they go, "Okay, he can kick my ass, he can kick my ass, okay, I fit in right over here." Yeah. You know? That's how we do things. Men look at things that way, very cut and dry, okay? So there's another way we can look at the human brain. You know, there's books written about this stuff. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus, and all kinds of stuff where it seems like sometimes we speak two different languages. It's not that. It's that women have these connections going back and forth through the corpus callosum between those two hemispheres, and they're playing with both those hemispheres, and we have to stop, move over manually, get into that other hemisphere, cogitate a while, work out the solution, and then, catch up and jump over again, and it's just not efficient for men to stay on track that way. Okay? So male and female brains are different.